Okay, so I went over the translation today of the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount because I want to complete that for you all who are going through the 40-Day Jesus Challenge. By the way, I'm going to put a link down below to the 40-Day Jesus Challenge page. It's on the website. It's up. It's ready to go. So it's got 39 days of reading schedule, starting with Mark, then going through Matthew, then Luke, and then John. And it also has some introductory material as well. So I think you'll enjoy that. I've got quite a bit of, maybe about half of the Sermon on the Mount finished. That's Matthew 5 through 7. I already had some of it finished. I had about half of it finished already, but I've gone over this beginning part and cleaned it up a lot, trying to make it uniform in its translation with other books that I've done, like First Peter and Jacob and Jude. And so I've got verses 1 through 26 finished for chapter 5. And today I want to talk with you about a specific issue that's raised by Jesus, which I hear misused all the time. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone teach on it correctly. Now, there may be. Maybe you've heard someone teach on it correctly. We'll see. But having done the translation from the Greek and worked out the rooted word translation, it's got a much fuller meaning, more accurate meaning. So I'm going to read this to you. And this is starting with verse 21. You all here, you all means you plural, not just a singular you, but you all is all of you. And it could be collective or it could be each one of you, of all of you. So you have to look at context. But then sometimes it's just you. And if it's just you, it can either be you all, if it's already understood that it's you all, or it can be the singular you. And if it can be understood as a singular you, it usually is in the rooted word. So you all hear that it is uttered to the ancestors, you will not murder. But whoever in the case that he may murder will himself be held into the dividing by decision. Verse 22. But I, this is Jesus speaking, but I am laying forth to you all, that each one being provoked to an anger that reaches forward in desire and excited passion of mind to his brother for a weak reason, will himself be held into the dividing by decision. But whoever in the case that he lays forth to his brother, you useless, worthless villain, shall himself be held into the joint council of the Sanhedrin. But whoever in the case that he lays forth, moron, with your mouth shut up as a foolish simpleton, will himself be held into the Gehenna of the fire. Okay. 2 verses. That verse 22 is really long. But it tells us a lot about the situation, because a lot of people will see in like the King James or the translation raka and fool. And well, who knows what raka means? You know, we don't say that in English, so yeah, I'll never be in danger of facing the Sanhedrin because I've never called anyone raka, you know? And so you're thinking that is like raka, yeah, I'm home safe. I don't even know what it means. I never use it, so I'm not worried. But fool, uh-oh, I'm in danger of hellfire. I'm in danger of hellfire because I called my brother a fool. But then as you're reading, you find out that Paul called people fools and Jesus called people fools. And you're like, well, how come they're not in hellfire? Well, yeah, you already changed it right there when you said, how come they're not in hellfire? Because you said, I'm in danger of hellfire. And then you changed it when we talked about Jesus and Paul. See, I'm doing this as an example of what I've heard people do, okay? They will say it correctly. first, and then when they want to set an example in order to disprove that it applies to them, they'll change one word to say, oh, see, it doesn't apply to them, so it shouldn't apply to me. But listen, you've got to pay attention to the context. So first off, Jesus is tightening up the law. He's not loosening it down. And he introduces that in verse 17. Verse 17 is probably the most radically different from your translations. Every translation has it wrong. And you say, Ron, how arrogant of you. How can you have it right and you're the only one who has it right? Well, I don't know that I'm the only one. Just all of the translations that I have looked at that verse at have it wrong. And the only way I can conclude that is that they either used a different manuscript, which is unlikely because I'm using the majority Byzantine manuscript, which is it's like the most common. And it has the Nestle variants in there as well in some places. So, but it's not unusual. It's nothing strange. But more than likely is that they took a metaphorical interpretation, but then the grammar is wrong in it too. They've mistranslated even the grammar. Anyway, I won't get into that because I've gotten into that in a couple other videos on the side as side issues. I'll just read it to you. You may not be doing by law. It says think instead of to do by law there. When it's literally to do by law. And it says in the lexicons, all of them, it means to do by law. So, you may not be doing by law that I come to loosen down accordingly the law or the prophets. I do not come to loosen down accordingly, but to fill up what was lacking. And again, that last word is translated to fulfill, which is not the same in the Old English as it is in the modern English. In the modern English, it means to do something like the requirements of it, like step by step. I'm going to do this law, do that law, do this law, do that law, and it's done. I've fulfilled the law. That's not what it's saying at all. It's not what it's saying at all. It's a word that means to fill up what's lacking. Like if you've got 3/4 of the cup full, and then it fills up the other fourth. That's what Jesus said here. He says that, verse 17, he says, but to fill up what was lacking. Then he goes to do that. You've heard it said, thou shalt not murder. I say it's not tight enough. It's not full enough. Not just murder is murder, but also hating your brother in your heart is murder. So we're going to fill that up some more. So it's stricter. It's tougher. Adultery. Adultery is not just adultery anymore. Adultery is taking a woman's beauty into your heart in an intimate way, too intimately. And you haven't even touched her, but you've committed adultery. Because Jesus said that's not full enough. We've got to fill that law up. It's not full enough. It's missing something. That's what he's doing here with murder. So you all hear that it's uttered to the ancestors. You will not murder. You say, I thought it was thou shalt not murder. Now, literally, it's the future tense. You will not murder. It's not the imperative. Imperative is like a command. You must not murder. That's thou shalt not murder. But shalt is actually future. You shall. It's like you're permitted, like in the future. It's a strange form. So you will not murder is what it says in the Greek. It's future tense. But whoever in the case that he may murder will himself be held into the dividing by decision. So he will be judged. Whoever murders will be judged because it says you will not murder. And then he goes into verse 22, which is really complicated. But I am laying forth to you all, that each one being provoked to an anger, not just any anger. And notice the one provoking is not the one who's guilty. The one who is provoked is the one who's guilty. It says that each one being provoked to an anger that reaches forward in desire and excited passion of mind. Your mind is just like, you can't stop. And you want to reach forth. You want to. You know you shouldn't, but you know you want to. If it's gotten to that level, that is the anger we're talking about. You've been provoked to the level of anger that Jesus is condemning as murder. That each one being provoked to an anger that reaches forward in desire, an excited passion of mind to his brother for a weak reason. Very important. So just reaching that level of anger does not mean that you have murdered your brother. But for a weak reason, yes. If you do not have a strong reason for being provoked to that level, then yes, you're guilty of murder, because Jesus was provoked to that level when he cleared out the temple. He was. Because he reached out, right? He reached out. He reached forward in desire and excited passion of mind to his brothers there, but not for a weak reason, for a very strong reason. But the one doing this for a weak reason will himself be held into the dividing by decision, just as the one who committed murder. But whoever, in the case that he lays forth to his brother, you useless, worthless villain. That's what the word raka means. Useless, worthless villain, to villainize. But it has those other two senses in it, of useless and worthless. You useless, worthless villain shall himself be held into the joint council of the Sanhedrin for the judgment. So that's how he will face the dividing by decision. Then it says, but whoever in the case that he lays forth, moron, with your mouth shut up as a foolish simpleton. That's what it means. So single word, where we get the word moron from. But the root of the word tells us the rest of the information. If you say that to your brother, if you speak like that to your brother, you will be held into the Gehenna of the fire. Okay? And you say, well, so if I just say that to my brother, no, you have to have the first part also, that you're provoked to an anger that reaches out in desire and excited passion of mind to his brother for a weak reason, saying these things. Because he says that that's the person who will be held in the dividing by decision. Then he separates those people who meet that criteria into two groups. So the ones who are provoked to an anger that is reaching out in desire and excitement of excited passion of the mind towards his brother for a weak reason, those people are separated into two groups. The ones who are claiming that the brother is a villain, useless and worthless. And then the other group that's calling their brother a stupid moron because he can't figure anything out, like he can't use his tongue to explain itself, to defend himself, to speak intelligently. Because it says, moron, with your mouth shut up as a foolish simpleton. Like you're missing something up here to the point where you can't even use your tongue to like parlay with me. That describes most of the people who come to the channel that I don't allow their comments into the front end. Those are the people who I am complaining about the most, are the ones who come along and are and are wanting to parlay and saying you're a foolish, stupid idiot. And then because, because I do show them plainly and straightforward in Scripture that they are wrong, and I call them very sensibly to calm down, to repent, to seek the Lord, things of this sort, they get angrier, and then they commit the unpardonable sin, and they want to take it even more extreme. Instead of just calling me stupid and foolish, then they want to go ahead and say that I'm of the devil. I'm a child of Satan. I'm a minister of Satan, that Satan is working through me, and all these kinds of things, any way they can to commit the unpardonable sin. They try so hard. I wish they'd try so hard to be saved and to live as a Christian at peace with their brothers. But they don't try that. They don't try that. They follow this anger that they've been provoked to, that reaches out forward in desire and excited passion of mind, and for weak reasons. And when I prove to them that their reasons are weak or even non-existent, that's when they get angry and they commit the unpardonable sin. And their hearts are revealed, and they've shipwrecked it. And even if I warn them in advance, they don't pull back. So now what's interesting is that if we look in here, we look at Raka, and it appears once in the New Testament, right here. That's it. But if we look at the word moros, where we get moron from, it occurs 12 times, probably even more. Sometimes there are some other forms that are not accounted for, like this is an adjective, so maybe the verb isn't accounted for in here, but there is a verb. So like we've got Matthew 5:22, then we got Matthew 7:26. I only have a snippet of it, like not even a full sentence. It says, shall be likened unto a foolish man. That sounds like the rock and the sand. And that's Matthew 7:26, so that'd be right. And then you have Matthew 23:17, you fools and blind men. You fools, using that word that can jeopardize you to be in the judgment of the Gehenna fire. Then Matthew 25:2, 5 of them were foolish, and 5, this talking about the foolish virgins. That word is used to describe half of those virgins. That's Jesus speaking. And then 25:3, for when the foolish took their lamps, of course, 25:8, and the foolish said unto the wise, the foolish virgins said to the wise. Then 1 Corinthians 1:25, because the foolishness of God. Paul uses that word to describe God. He does it, kind of indicating that that's how the unbelievers see it, is the foolishness of God. 1 Corinthians 3:18, let him become a fool that, and then 1 Corinthians 4:10, we are fools for Christ's sake. 2 Timothy 2:23, but foolish and unlearned men, clearly, right? And so he's calling them foolish. He's using that term that puts you in danger of Gehenna fire. And then it says, but avoid foolish questions or controversies. That's in Titus 3:9. So the word is used by Paul and Jesus to describe people. And yet they're not going to be judged in the Gehenna fire. They're not going to be destined and condemned to it. And so that takes us back to the fact that it doesn't say that whoever says that is going to hell. That's not what it says, but that's how these people use it. if you say that, you're going to hell. This channel Seeking Truth was behaving that way and challenged me to show him, to prove to him where Paul or Jesus said fools, or to prove to him that people aren't going to hell for saying that. That's the guy that I said, I don't do the work for lazy Christians, and especially lazy leaders who aren't prepared for the lesson that they give. I said, you got Google. You take your time, your 20 seconds to Google it. If you're too lazy for that, then we don't have anything to talk about. I stand on that too. Yeah, really, these are the laziest people I've ever seen. And they go off half-cocked, thinking that they can teach on a subject, and they don't know anything about the subject. They only remember one verse, and they remember it out of context, and they take it out of context, and they apply it in a wrong way. And they don't know any Greek. They haven't gone in and looked what it says in the actual Bible. They just look at their English translation, and they go, oh, okay. And then they forget half of that. And they try to teach based on the half they remember, but they forget an important half that corrects them and rebukes them on what they say in their teaching. So we got to be very careful. And like Jacob says, not many of us should assume to be teachers, because we will be judged more harshly. No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't assume to be teachers. I'll read that to you here so that you can hear it straight up. This is Jacob 3:1. Do not so many of you aspire to become teachers, my brothers. Consider it, and you will know that we will receive a greater dividing of decision for judgment. So it's right there. And yet, these people don't care what the Bible says. They don't take that to heart. They don't believe it. If they believed it, they wouldn't be teaching. So I hope this clarifies this issue. I hope this clarifies this issue about Raka and fool. So if you ever have a problem with it, just go to therootedword.com/TRW, the rooted word, TRW. So it's therootedword.com/TRW. That's the abbreviation like KJV for King James Version. TRW is the rooted word. So therootedword.com, all spelled together as one word, therootedword.com/TRW. That takes you to the interface, and you can click on a tab that says select book, scroll down and select your book that you want to read, in this case Matthew, and then it'll refresh to load up Matthew. And right now it starts on chapter 5. We don't have anything before chapter 5 done. But it opens up to the common English edition automatically. If you want to see one verse per line, so each verse starts on the left side, you can just click on the second tab that says TRW Common by Verse. And then it'll nicely line up each verse number along the left side. The other one is just like one big paragraph. Whereas TRW Precise by Verse, that's the Precise English edition, which is harder to read because it's closer to the Greek in word order. So I'd stick with TRW Common or TRW Common by Verse and read. If you go TRW Common by Verse, you can find the verse a lot easier. And we're reading from verses 21 through 22. So now you know that there are conditions that must be met in order to be held into the Gehenna of fire for a dividing of decision. And it doesn't say in danger of. It says held into the Gehenna of fire. So whoever meets these qualifications will be judged into, like judged and cast into the Gehenna fire. So make sure you don't ever meet those requirements. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.